Tom Campbell here. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Good afternoon, Tom. We were discussing last week how we've done an interview on the spiritual paths, 3 as you've described them: the path of the warrior, the path of service, and the path of surrender. And there were some ideas that you'd like to expand on from that interview.
I ran into a young woman some days back who had been on the path of surrender for years. And she had surrendered pretty much entirely to the larger consciousness system, or we can just say to God or to Source or whatever it is, however she had saw it in her mind. And she had done it very completely. So when Source told her to, move to Australia or go someplace else, she'd do it. And then she'd be there a while and Source would say, well, you should go someplace else now. And she'd do it. So she had no problem about uprooting her life and walking away from whatever she was engaged in or the friends that she had or whatever, and just going off someplace else because Source indicated to her that it was time for her to move and where she should go. So her life was one of surrender. And because of her surrender was complete, she had lost a lot of ego. She had let go of beliefs. She lived in the core of her being. She lived in that space of intuition, her intuitive space at the being level. And for that reason, she had lots of synchronicity in her life. Things just happened. And as she needed something, it would appear, just as she needed it. And life was this continuous run of synchronicity and small miracles that would just happen when she needed it. But Source stopped talking to her. Source kind of left, and she was wondering why. What happened? Did I do something wrong? What's happened? Why have you forsaken me? Kind of an attitude. And as I was looking into that while she was talking to me, it was made known to me that the problem was that Source wanted her to start making her own choices. She was a good follower of Source, but it's not just about following. You have to develop your own free will choices such that you make choices, meaningful choices, choices with consequences. You make choices and then you learn from what happens as a result of those choices. You look back after a while and see, well, how did that choice play out? Oh, that was a good one. That was a bad one. You learn from it. And that's how you grow up. Another way to say that is that she was living entirely out of the being level in her intuitive side, and she did not have her intellect engaged much in the big choices. Now, I'm sure she had her intellect engaged in the little choices, like, when to call a cab, where are my sunglasses? I'm sure she had her intellect engaged in her everyday choices. But in the big choices, she had disengaged her intellect. She just followed the path that she was given. But that's not enough. You can't just surrender. You have to develop the whole of you. You have to develop that intuitive side, which she had done very well through the path of surrender, but you also have to develop that intellectual side, that choice-making side, that side that does analysis, that side that does make judgments. And they both have to work together. You have to own those free will choices and not just go and do whatever you're told to go and do. That would make you a good follower. That would make you a good servant. I'm a servant of the source, right? Or I'm a servant of God. We've all heard those kinds of things said. And they're said in such a way that that's enough. That's all you really have to be, is you have to surrender. And in this surrender, you will become enlightened. You will understand. You will grow as much as you can grow. But I realized then that that's not enough. You have to also develop your whole self, intellect and intuitive, both together. If you just develop an intellect, well, that will limit your life tremendously. You will only focus on the things that really aren't that important, and you'll hardly focus at all on the things that are very important. But if you just are in the intuitive side, you will not necessarily be making the big choices. Everything will be done just intuitively, and that intellectual side will start to be weak and not do its part. Both have to work together. Both have to become a whole person. So you have to be very intuitive, but you also have to be intellectual. And you have to be both of those, such that together, working together, your intellect and your intuition make your choices and you go through life. It's not good to be too much out of balance on either side of those. So the system basically said, I'm going to stop telling you what to do or where to go. You're relying on me too much for all your big decisions. And you need to make those decisions yourself. In other words, if the system kept making her decisions for her, it would stunt her growth. It wouldn't be good for her development. She wouldn't grow. She wouldn't evolve as well, just because as a follower, as a servant, you're limited into how far you can grow. So you have to take charge of your choices. You have to take charge of where you're going and why you're going there. You have to own it. That's how you grow up, and that's how you raise the quality of your consciousness. So then I started thinking about the others. Well, that's the path of surrender. Okay, it's in the East, there are two major competing schools. Well, there's probably more than that. There's probably hundreds, but in the biggest picture, there's at least two major schools that I'm aware of, and one of them is the path of surrender, which I think Tantra is pretty much down that path. At least Rajneesh, that was his earlier name, came out of that tantric school, and his name then was Osho later on. But and he's a good example. He, in some of his books that I read, he was saying, oh, those yogis are always on the path of the warrior. They're always struggling and fighting with their egos and fighting with their beliefs. And it's fight, 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 struggle, struggle, struggle. And if you're fighting and struggling, then you're not just being. You're all wrapped up in your ego and your intellect. And it's a very slow path. It's very hard to do that. Those yogis just need to surrender. And once you surrender, then it's all done. All that goes away. When you surrender your ego, you surrender your beliefs. You're now just if you are a tool for the source. And that's not good enough. Now, if you were a tool for the source, and meanwhile, you also were careful to make your own choices. All right, you got nudged to do this or nudged to do that, but you'd consider it and say, well, I could do that, or I could stay here, and make it your own choice rather than just follow it. Then there's not a point, even if what you do is end up following it. But you make it your choice to follow it rather than just, oh, I gotta nudge to move, so let's move. See, that's just following. If I got a nudge to move, and I'm going to consider it, I'm going to see, what are the possibilities either place, and what do I think about it? And then you may say, well, all the other times I moved when I was nudged, they worked out pretty well. And I'm about done here anyway. So, all right, let's move and do something new. Well, again, that's your choice rather than it's time to move. Okay, that's just a follower. So there's a difference there. So it's not so much the choices you make. You could still almost always go with your nudges. It's not that you have to choose differently or that you have to tell those nudges no, but you have to make them out of your own free will, not just slavishly follow them, you see? So there's two different paths there. So you could be in a school that was mainly surrender, that would be fine, but you also have to own your choices. I make these choices with my own free will. I choose to follow my nudges because, that's what I think is the better choice rather than I just follow them because I've surrendered and I just do what I'm told. So two different things there altogether. Then it comes also to the path of service. The path of service is being kind, giving. It's about other. But you need to also engage your intellect in that path. How best to be kind? How can I best serve other? All of that requires some analysis and some judgment and some understanding. So those two should develop together in the path of service. But of course, the trap in the path of service is that you get stuck. You can get stuck on the path of service. You can get trapped in your service. And indeed, one of the tests I was given when in an out-of-body experience that I had many years ago, I was given the situation where I was on the path of service and I was taking care of being of service to this group of people. And maybe there were 30, 40, 50, 60 people involved in it. And because of me and whatever I brought to it, I don't know whether connections or know-how or something, but this was just a test. Okay, so this was a scenario that was thrown in front of me. Because of me, they were living much better now. They had, I'm just making up details to give you the sense of it, but they had fresh water. They had homes that didn't leak. They had this and that. They had much better life. They were learning to become literate and read and write. And all these things were happening because I was there encouraging, I was there providing those things, explaining how to build roofs that don't leak, whatever it was I was giving, the details don't matter. That was being helpful. And then I got this opportunity to go someplace else and that there was potential to learn, to grow in this other path, because there's potentials to learn and grow in all paths. And I thought, well, but if I leave, all these people will not do so well because they depend on me. And they're my friends. I've been with them for, 10, 15 years. They're my friends. I know their families. I hold all their children. Can I just walk off and let them be back on their own, which will probably mean not do so well? Or do I go on and do these other things? So that was my test question. And I thought about that for a while. And I said, well, leaving them knowing that they're not going to do so well, and they're my friends, that doesn't feel good. On the other hand, I don't want to be stuck here. There's more. During that time that I gave them services, they had opportunity to learn how to do those things themselves. They should have, I tried to teach. They should have learned how to patch those roofs. They should have learned now, how to read books and how they could improve themselves. So they could pick themselves up and probably go forward, but would they? Probably not, without encouragement. So in any case, I made my best guess. I said, well, I think I'll go on. I have to go on. I don't want to be trapped in this same situation. there's others out there, perhaps more people than this, or perhaps other people that need, me, I need to be involved with them, other people I could give things to. And as it turned out, that was the right answer. But it was heart-wrenching. It wasn't something I could walk away from easily. It was very heart-wrenching to say, hey, folks, I've got to move on. So that's the trap in this path of service. You have to constantly be growing, be evolving, be connecting with people. You can't just get in a trap of doing one thing. The growing thing has to be expanding. And it's not just about you and your own growth, but it's about other connections, other ways to help. Maybe the next time you end up with 200 people that you're helping rather than, 40 or 60. I don't know. But if you just get to the point that you're doing the same old thing over and over again, and it's working for this one thing, it's probably time to move on, to see if you can arrange somebody else to take your place, or see if you can arrange for some other kinds of things to help them, and then move on. So that's the trap there. So the last one, of course, is the warrior path. Well, the warrior path does have its intellect engaged all the time, because it's struggling and fighting that ego and those beliefs, and what are those fears, and I'm trying to find them and root them out. So the intellect is there and the being level is there. It's all this struggle trying to master oneself, let go of one's fears, and grow up. And that is probably the slowest way to go, but I think it's a pretty good choice, in as much as all the pieces of you tend to grow up together. Because otherwise, some pieces can grow up very much while other parts not so much, like this young woman I was talking about. Her intuitive side was grown up very well. She was at home. She lived out of her intuitive side. Her ownership of her choices, not so much. You see, so that kind of puts her out of balance. So in any case, there's traps on all the sides. Of course, on the yogic side, where you're in struggle, on the warrior's path, and in all of them, actually, on all three paths, there is a trap in that you can think, or you can believe that you're doing really well when you're not. You can believe that you are grown and don't have many fears and don't have any ego and don't have many beliefs, when you're acting more than you are being. You're acting kind. You're acting as though you have surrendered. You're going through thinking all the right thoughts, saying all the right things, but it doesn't really run very deep as far as you at the being level. So that's a trap in all the paths. And I may have mentioned that last time. So I just wanted to add in this little bit of additional work. It's not enough just to surrender. It's not enough just to give, just to give service. And it's certainly not enough just to struggle and fight and not actually get anywhere, to be chasing your own tail because you're doing it out of your intellect. Of course, that wouldn't work either. Or sometimes people get so focused on the process of getting rid of fear and beliefs that they don't actually get rid of very many fears and beliefs. They're tied up with the process. The process becomes the thing they focus on, not getting rid of the fears and beliefs. So anyway, just wanted to add that little additional thought to people who are thinking about their path, their own personal path to evolving the quality of their consciousness. It all has to be done in an integrated way. Should all be done so that all the pieces of you, the intellectual and the intuitive, kind of grow up together. And taking little bits from all the paths is probably a good idea. Sometimes you need some surrendering to let go of control issues. I want to control everything. See, there's some surrendering in that. So even if you're a warrior, you need to let go of control. You need some surrender. And of course, you need to be kind and giving to people as well. So I think probably the best path is none of the above only, but all of the above, all at the same time. You need to do all three and work on all three, but keep each one not off to itself, but all three have to be interactive and be connected with each other. You need to serve, you need to surrender, but you also need to own it, not just follow or not just be kind, but own all of your choices, own your free will, and make all those big choices that you make. Learn from them and grow from that. So that's really all I wanted to say. It's just a little addendum to that discussion we had before.
That's really good advice and a good expansion on the interview. So really what you're saying is it is ideal to balance the intellect with the intuition and use a bit of each of those paths to be optimally balanced and
Yes.
grow.
Good summary.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. That was really interesting.
Thank you, Donna. Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We now have well over 1,000 hours of free video on this user-friendly, ad-free YouTube channel. Though these videos are free to our viewers, they represent many thousands of hours in production and editing, and many thousands of dollars invested in video and audio equipment, along with the required computers and software to store and process the raw video into finished products. So far, all of this content has been funded directly out of our own pockets. Be assured, we will always continue to do what we can. It's our life, our purpose, a labor of love that we will continue to pursue as best we can. However, those pockets are not as deep as they used to be. Thus, we are now seeking to augment our resources with support from our viewers. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our newly created Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you.